Earth was just coming into view. Now it looked like that pale blue dot Carl Sagan had spoken of. It looked like home. Not just another speck in the blackness he now hated. And in that blue was warmth. It resonated with him. And strangely, as he laid his eyes on Earth, he began to feel human again and began to cry. He knew his name was secured firmly in the history books, but it meant little. The nightmares would last a lifetime. It hadn't been the sound of the screams. He never heard them, not in space. It was the faces of the screams that would stay with him. They met him every time he tried to close his eyes and sleep. There was a guilt there. Why was he coming back and not the other three? Somehow he felt ashamed. He had followed all the protocols correctly. They hadn't. And there had been mistakes on Earth control too. But still, he felt ashamed. Like soldiers returning home, thinking of their fallen comrades in battle. Why couldn't have they come home too? He would be back in several days, he hoped. There was an apprehension and anxiety that someone hadn't got their calculations correct or hadn't done their job properly, and he would be lost in space forever, or more accurately, for about a month, until the supplies vanished and he became a skeleton floating through the void. Then he remembered there were no other organisms on the ship and wondered if his body would even decompose properly. It shouldn't matter, but for some reason he found himself wondering about the eventuality of his corpse. He nearly posed the question to Earth Control, but there was already an awkwardness between them. The mission was a failure, more than that, a disaster. He was pretty sure it would go down as the biggest in history, comparable to that of the Titanic. He wondered who would play him in the film. He wondered if the film rights had already been secured. Would NASA already be having that meeting? Had money already exchanged hands? Surely somehow he'd been cut out of the payment from that deal. Funny what goes through your head when you're floating through space alone, he thought. For the first time he began to see the beauty in regularity. He was 35 and sure he had wanted to be famous. He had come to terms with his ego in his late 20s. He had found himself literally on the trajectory to the stars, almost. He doubled down and put everything he had into making sure he was on the first manned mission to Mars. Life had been far too perfect up until 6 months ago, when it happened. The perfect family, upbringing, money, friends. It had all felt so easy, so accessible. He knew he had had a good life. But when he had seen life taken away from him, destroyed right before his eyes in gruesome circumstances, the stars, the ego, the history books, they evaporated in importance. What had once seemed beneath him, the kind of cowardice he used to mock, now seemed the most beautiful of ideas. Regularity. And that's what stung. There would be no woman waiting with their daughter as he landed back on Earth. Yet there was a very definite picture in his mind, one he would dream about and tweak constantly, just to make it more painful. He used to dream about himself on faraway planets. Now he dreamt about people he wouldn't even know on Earth. He would dream about two women on lush green grass on a sunny day, one a mother, one a child. They were both in white summer dresses. The sky was blue behind them, and behind them stood another couple, older, his parents, smiling, embracing each other, embracing themselves to watch their son embrace his family. But it was all a dream, a fallacy, a fiction. And it was that moment Every time he conjured this image in his mind, reminding himself it wasn't real, that he had no special people in his life, that he felt that hit to the stomach and tried to resist the urge to cry. He wanted to cry. He wanted to let it all spill out, to hammer his fists on the space deck, to try and break the laws of physics and allow those on Earth to hear his screams from space. But he didn't. The cameras were on. Ground control was watching, judging. That hurt him too, infuriated him. He hadn't put a foot wrong on this mission. They had. But if he were to show some psychological weakness now, after watching his colleagues destroyed from the inside, their muscles torn through the orifices of their faces and bodies, watching souls disappear in an instant, if he were to show some human emotion, they would want words. They would see him as problematic. They would try to put him back on course. But indirect, calculated ways, they thought, would help him in his subconscious. But he would know what they were doing. That irritated him. To be human out here was to be wrong. He questioned the whole thing then. Space exploration. Why? It's all there, he thought, moving to the window, touching it. That small pale blue dot, becoming ever closer. Appreciation, he thought. That's a superpower. It's not always greener on the other side, he told himself as he looked at that pale blue dot.